So today what we're going to be doing is we're going to be taking that data that we collected last week and turning it into a graph. But before we're able to do this, we have to really analyze the data and decide, what kind of graph can I actually make with this information? Because not all information can be collected the same way and presented in the same exact graph. So for example, my survey question is, what is your favorite vacation? That's what I used last week to ask people that I know, and I gave them 4 options. The 4 categories that I chose were beach, camping, sightseeing, and visiting family. So because I chose to use a graph that involves different categories, or choose a question that involves different categories, I would have to use either a pictograph or a bar graph, because pictographs and bar graphs have categories, name categories that really help us represent the data. I wouldn't be able to use a line plot with this information because a line plot is usually talking about frequency. So you'll find numbers instead of categories, and you'll see how many times that number of things comes up. For example, when you lose teeth, you could take a survey of a class, how many teeth they lost, and figure out how many teeth each student lost. So that involves a lot of number work, and that's how we use the line plot. Now I'll show you more about that when I do the line plot video. But let me show you how I would take this information and create a pictograph. In the next video, I'll show you how I would take this same information and create a bar graph. So what you want to do is either print out this page. We've uploaded it to Google Classroom. If you don't have a printer where you are, that's totally fine. You can just, on a piece of paper, create the box with the different rows and columns. You can use this as a guide to help you figure out how many lines you'll need. So I'm going to start off by filling in my title. If you do use the template, it says title right on there, and there's a line for you to include it. Now, I'm not going to write the title as a question because it's no longer a survey question that I'm asking. I'm putting my data into the graph. So I would say, as my title, favorite vacation. So that is explaining what my pictograph is going to be showing. So it's the favorite vacation. Now, I'm going to use a color to put in my labels. So I already have my labels set up in my tally chart, but I'm going to change this one a little bit because instead of tallies, let me see. I'm going to write vacation because that is definitely one of my labels that shows the categories. But I'm also going to write number of votes, and I put the little number sign instead of writing it out. Number of votes, because those are the people that actually chose that vacation type. All right, so now I'm going to write the different vacation choices, the different categories. So once again, I can copy those right from my tally chart. The first one was beach. I'm going to keep them in the same order so I don't get confused. The second one was camping. The third one was sightseeing, as we can see here. And the fourth one was visiting family. So I'm just writing them exactly the same way I had written them on my tally chart. Now, this is where we do things specifically for a pictograph. So first, I'm going to make my key at the bottom, and I'm going to decide on a picture for my key. So I'm going to write the word key so that people know, will know what they're looking at when they see my pictograph or look at my pictograph. So I'm going to put a heart. Today I'm going to use hearts instead of smiley faces because remember, a pictograph, you can use any picture you want. And since it's favorite vacation, I think a heart makes sense. So the key, a heart equals, is the same as 1 vote. All right, so it's one person's choice. So now I have to look at the beach, and I see that because there's a line going through my tallies here, I know that's 5 right off the bat. I don't have to count them. 6, 7, 8. So I have 8 votes for the beach. So I'm going to draw 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I'm going to keep the shape or the size of my picture pretty consistent so that our data makes sense. It's not we have huge hearts and then tiny hearts. We want to keep them roughly the same size. So for camping, I see I have 4 tally marks. So I would put 1, 2, 3, 4 hearts, and I can see already my pictograph is coming together because of the people I asked, the beach was more popular. And then the next one is sightseeing. So I have 10. I can see that because I have 2 lines going through. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. All right. And then visiting family, I only have 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So, and there we have a completed pictograph. Make sure when you're doing this that you have all components, your title, your labels, your categories, your data, and your key. Very, very important, friends. Tune into the next video if you prefer to create a bar graph. So I have the same data that I just used to create our pictograph. So if you don't feel like creating a pictograph, if you much rather create a bar graph, that's completely fine. I'm going to show you how I would use the same data that I collected last week to create a bar graph, because the information you collect to make a pictograph can also be used to make a bar graph because they both involve categories. So what I did was I went ahead and printed out the 4 groups, which means there's slots for 4 categories on our bar graph. This is a template that is online, uploaded to Google Classroom. If you don't have a printer, that is okay. You can make your own bar graph by drawing the 2 axes, so a line going vertically and a line going horizontally, making your own scale, going up by 1, and then doing the rest as you would on this paper. So I'm going to once again start off with my title. So the title of my bar graph, as I know from my pictograph, is Favorite Vacation, because that is what people picked and that is what is represented in my graph, or will be represented in my graph when I'm finished with it. So favorite vacation. Now I want to go ahead and put my labels in. So I know that I have to label the categories down below, and I also have to label my scale, which in this case is already completed for me. So the label for my categories is actually vacation. Oops. So V-A-C-A, vacation. So I'm going to write that down there. And then over here, on this label would be the number of votes. Okay. So now that I have my title and my labels on my bar graph, I need to write in my categories. All right. So as far as categories go, I am going to put in the ones that I have listed on my tally chart. So the first one is beach. The second one is camping. So I would just write them on the lines provided, as you can see. The third one is sightseeing. To write a bit smaller for this one because it's very long. And the fourth one is visiting family. So now I have my title, my labels, my categories, and my scale. I can go ahead and start creating my bars. I like to do alternating colors, and I like to make sure I have space in between each bar, because if I didn't leave space between each bar, it wouldn't be a bar graph. It would actually be something called a histogram that you will learn about later in your schooling. So I'm gonna get started with beach. I see that there's 8 people that selected beach. So I'm gonna go up to 8, where I see 8 on my bar graph on the scale. And I'm just going to draw the outline of my bar. So I draw the top line first, and then I draw each line, and then I'll shade it in just so that it stands out even more. All right, now, camping. I see I have 4 friends that chose camping. It is not as popular, so I'm going to go to my camping section. I've left 2 kind of boxes as space in between, which is just enough. And I'm going to draw the lines to make my bar for camping, and then shade it in. All right, the next one is sightseeing. Sightseeing is quite popular. I see there's 10 people that want sightseeing. That might be our winner here. So I'm going to make sure my line is at 10, then draw the lines in here and shade it in. And then the last one is visiting family. Visiting family is a bit more popular than camping, but not as popular as our other choices. So I'm gonna make sure my line is at 5, and I'm gonna draw my bars going down. Whoops, my line's going down to make that bar, and then I'll shade it in. Okay. So in there you have a completed bar graph. So as long as you have your title, your labels, your categories, your scale, and your bars with space in between, you're good to go. Watch the next video to see how I would create a line plot if I had different data, if I chose a different question that did not involve categories, but numbers instead. All right, so in this last video, I'm going to show you what type of data you would have collected in order to create a line plot. So for example, if you had a question that asked how many of something, like how many teeth did each student in a class lose? Or as I have here, how many seashells did the camp students collect at the beach? If you're talking about a number of things, you would use a line plot, because instead of categories, you are going to have different numbers of things. So for example, in my data that I collected for this question, I had a number of seashells, and then I had my tally marks that represented the students. Okay, so 2 kind of different things that are number representations. So if you have a question that asked how many or how much of something, you would create a line plot, because that is the type of graph we would use to represent the frequency of something, or it would be the graph that we would use to represent if we are working with numbers instead of categories. So I have the template of a line plot that you can find on Google Classroom. If you do not have a printer, all you have to do is draw a line, like a number line basically, with 2 arrows on the side. So I'm gonna start by putting my title at the top of my bar graph somewhere here. So I'm going to say, I'm not gonna write the question because I already asked people this question, but instead of how many seashells did the camp students at the beach collect, seashells collected at beach.
I'm not sure.
Sorry, Alexa's talking to me. All right, so that is my title. We actually need capitals for a title. So seashells collected at the beach, or at beach. It can be short because it's not a sentence, it's a title. So seashells collected at the beach, that would go on the top of my line plot. And then I would have to create my scale. So just keep in mind, when you're creating a line plot, you wouldn't skip numbers because it is a number line and they are increasing by a whole number each time in this case of what we are doing. So I'm not going to start at 1 because I have no students that collected 1 seashell. I'm actually going to have my starting number of 2. Then I have 3, 4, 5. I'm going to make it go to 7, although I don't need it to, but I just had space on my line plot, or my number line. So these, remember, are the number of seashells. So I'm actually going to write that as my label. Number of seashells. And then on top of my number line, I am going to place my X's to show the data. So for example, 4 students collected 2 seashells at the beach. So I would put 1, 2, 3, 4 X's above my 2. Now over here I see through, 7 students collected 3 seashells. So over 3, I would put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 X's. All right. Then over 4, I would have to do 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Oops, I should have put my title higher. So think of that when you're doing your own line plot. And then 15 students selected or picked up, not selected, 5 seashells. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So remember, make sure to have that, that title far away. Maybe actually do the title last. And then 6 and 7, no one collected seashells, so that students can see that in the graph once they look at the data. So that is how you would create a line plot. So good luck if you had a question that asked how many or how much for making your line plot.